It's a time of change in the UW system, with the four-year colleges absorbing the two-year colleges and other issues pending. UW-Madison, UW-Milwaukee get a lot of attention, but it's time to interview the UW-Platteville Chancellor, Dennis Shields, and get his perspective on that. Chancellor, thank you for the welcome to UW-Platteville.
Well, welcome to Platteville, and thanks for coming down and talking with us.
Appreciate your time. In this evolving era, what is the mission of UW-Platteville, sir?
Well, I don't think the mission has changed. You know, we are located in Southwest Wisconsin. We serve that region. We're a point of access and affordability to higher education. Our goal is to provide a high-quality education to our students at an affordable price and send them out to be tremendously successful when they leave.
You have a very interesting history. We drive past the big M for mining, right?
Absolutely.
Is mining still a part of this campus?
Well, yes and no. We don't have a mining degree, but our extraordinary engineering program sprang from that mining program.
It did?
Yes.
Okay. Give us a profile of the average undergrad on your campus.
Well, the overwhelming majority of our students are the traditional age college students, age 18 to 22. They're from within a 150-mile radius. About 75% of our students are residents of Wisconsin. We've had great success with our tri-state program, so about 15% of our students come from Illinois and Iowa. A good portion of our ability to be financially viable has been our ability to attract students from Iowa and Illinois. It's put us on a little different footing than some of our sister institutions.
So reciprocity is an issue here?
It's not reciprocity.
It's not.
It's a tuition program that makes our tuition competitive for in-state students from Iowa and Illinois, while still paying more than residents. So if you were to look at our circumstance, about $15 million additional dollars come from our ability to attract significant numbers of students from Iowa and Illinois.
And your biggest major here, sir?
Engineering.
Engineering.
Yes.
And civil, electric?
Mechanical engineering
Mechanical.
is the biggest one, but very strong electrical, very strong civil engineering, and environmental engineering is growing.
Percentage that graduate within 4 years?
About 21%. It's one of the things, we've driven it up. It's gone up 2 or 3% since I've been here. You know, the lag in that data is 3 to 5 years, but we've been focusing on improving that number for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're seeing some real progress that way.
The national debate over student debt, the average graduate of UWP has a debt of what?
About $30,000, depending on how you measure it. A good portion of that is driven by this sort of flat need-based aid contribution that we've gotten from the state. That's stayed fairly flat for the last 10 years while costs have gone up.
Congratulations on starting your 9th year this fall. Changes that you've implemented, how has this campus changed under your leadership, sir?
Well, my guiding philosophy when I arrived here was that given the stresses on state budgets, we had to more and more do things that we could control our own destiny. So the Tri-State Initiative, which was a real insightful and forward-thinking program that was started by my predecessor, David Marquis, we built upon that. We went from 400 or 500 of those students to now about 1,500 students enrolled here. So a good part of what we have to do is how do we navigate this circumstance where the support we get from the state, it was cut back significantly over a number of years. Now it's starting to increase, but we can't rely on that to survive. We have to develop other ways to make ourselves relevant and get support from other directions, philanthropic support, support from business and industry, et cetera.
Well, that was part of my questions. In your long-term planning, do you assume that this campus and others in the UW system are going to get less state aid? Ergo, you have to look at some of these other areas to keep it viable?
Well, I wouldn't want to give up on the notion that the state will continue to be significant contributors to our fiscal well-being, but that's going to ride a roller coaster. And so if we're going to manage, we have to sort of flatten it out so that we can predict where we are. So in the last biennial budget, we got a bit of an increase, and it comes in different ways. So now there's this performance-based funding.
Yes.
It's a piece of it. So it's going to come in different fashions. But we need to create other sort of revenue streams to sort of balance out what we're doing. So our philanthropic giving has gone up. Our support from business and industry has gone up. And part of that is because we've made a concentrated effort to reach out to them, interact with them, understand what their needs are, making clear to them the ways that we can help them if they support us. So for example, all of our engineering students have to have senior design projects. You know, sometimes they do that for nonprofits and for local governments, but a lot of times it's with business and industry. For years, that was a service we provided to business and industry at no cost. Mm-hmm. Now, I think last year we received something between $80,000 and $100,000 in support from business and industry to support that very important part of our engineering program. So those are the kinds of things that we have to do. I think it's real important for your audience to understand the sort of different missions of the institution. So
Please.
The University of Wisconsin-Madison is a world-class institution, Research One. But their mission is a little different from ours. We're essentially a teaching institution. So we don't attract a lot of government grant money to support research. Right. And we don't have the luxury of charging what the market will bear to attract non-residents that can supplement the state support that we receive. So we have to be creative in other ways. In some ways we have to become more like them, in that we have to be more entrepreneurial, more innovative in the ways that we attract the support from other entities. A key component of that is making sure that we remain relevant in our region. So we've been going around to dozens of small communities, medium-sized communities in southwest Wisconsin, interacting with small businesses, manufacturers, local elected officials, chambers of commerce, so that they know how we can be relevant for them. An example is there was a local community where they were having a lot of retirements in their government, you know, the staffers, and they thought it was an excellent time to review their business practices and processes. So instead of finding an outside consultant, what they did is they teamed up with one of our faculty members and some of our students to have them over a year and a half do that evaluation. That, in addition to the value they got from that, it also indicates to them how we want to be engaged with them, so that they will be supportive of the kinds of things that are important to us. Good example is the building projects we have on hand here. We were able to convince the legislature and the governor of the importance of that because the whole region said it was important to support this university.
Are you alluding to the new engineering facility?
The engineering building, the significant remodel of Babel Hall, which is our life science building. Those two projects are over $80 million, or approaching $80 million in infrastructure that is greatly needed on this campus.
In the fiscal food fight in the Capitol for money, especially capital budget, what points did you make to get approval for a new engineering center, sir?
Well, first of all, the facility we have was built in 1964, okay, and it's not real modern. We had the good fortune through our Senator, Howard Markline, who was on Joint Finance Committee, to actually host one of the Joint Finance Committee meetings here on campus, where a number of community stakeholders impressed upon the importance of that kind of investment. Just as critical, once the committee meeting was over, we had the opportunity to have them tour the facilities. And they were able to see,
1964?
Yes. It was very interesting. One of the faculty members, unprompted by me, so he was showing them a wind tunnel that was a part of the original facility. And he made the comment, so if something breaks on this, we have to go on eBay to find the parts. Mm. So it drove home to these legislators that, oh yeah, there is a real need here. and made him very responsive to that. And I think that's part of the process the whole system has to do. You're not going to get me to get into a big fight with my other institutions. I fully will appreciate my colleagues have, really significant needs on their campus. But the engineering building is important because it will help build capacity, but also it's a great need in the state. And our students need to be trained in a modern facility.
WisconsinEye recently had a member of your ag faculty on one of our Newsmakers shows. So you've got a strong partnership with the farm community in Southwest Wisconsin, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that we have to do is be responsive to their needs. So while we've had an agricultural school here for a long time, great soils, great animal science programs, we didn't have a dairy science program. They were very interested in our developing that program, and we did. And in just 2 short years, we've gotten over $300,000 of support from local dairy industry areas to help support that program because they see how critical it is to this region of the state, and they really appreciate our being responsive to that need.
The Board of Regents just approved a budget that includes an upper of $104 million, much of it tied to metrics and accountability. How will that bring major changes on your campus, Chancellor?
I remember a conversation I had with one of the senior members of the legislature almost a year ago, and he was asking me that same question. And what I said to him is, I have a pretty clear idea of the things we must do. We need to keep college affordable. We need to retain students from first year to second year, and we need to graduate more of them in 4 years and graduate more of them in 6 years. I'm going to do that, whether they give me incentive money or not, okay? I think this individual is pretty impressed that that was the approach that I was taking. We do a lot of things that already that have been highlighted in the legislature as important things for us to do. We know that internship and co-op opportunities are real important to our students and to business and industry. Well, we have hundreds and hundreds of students that are involved in internships and co-ops. What it told me is that we weren't getting our message out, that we weren't making it clear. Yes, we're addressing this need. As we talk to employers, very few employers want to hire somebody that they don't see having had an internship or co-op experience.
What's your placement rate for your grads that come out of your engineering school?
It's approaching 98%, and I think the important thing for Wisconsin people to understand is over 75% of our engineering graduates stay in state.
That's a huge debate, given the brain drain debate in the Capitol. As I study the stats on the UW system, a significant number of faculty, especially those with the most experience, are either eligible to retire or will be within 5 years. How does that stand on your campus, sir?
We have a significant number of people, I can't give you exact percentage, it's going to turn over, but that's not a surprise, that's ongoing. One of the things we've done to address that is to actually redirect our own resources to helping us be more competitive in compensation. That's been a significant challenge. Our faculty salaries are lower than most of the salaries across the system, and we've realized that, and we've taken significant steps to improve that, to make it competitive. It's not that people don't want to come, but if there's a 15 to 20% difference in the level of salary,
that's significant.
Then they're going to choose to go other places.
What's your elevator speech? You get in an elevator with high school seniors and they're talking about where they're going to apply, and by the time you get up to the 9th floor, you're up. You should come to UW-Platteville because?
Because we have great academic programs that are directly relevant to the workforce. The return on investment you get from coming to school here is amongst the best in Wisconsin. And it's taught in small classes. This is a teaching university. The student to faculty ratio is about 20 to 1. So in some ways you're getting the kind of education that you would get at a much more expensive small private college than a sort of a large public one. It's also a manageable environment. an environment. Part of the reason I'm here is I got the sense when I visited this campus almost 10 years ago now, of the commitment the faculty have to great student outcomes. There's a difference on this campus that most of our faculty are teaching 4 courses a semester and are giving direct advice to students on an ongoing basis.
You've heard that debate in the Capitol
Yes.
about how some UW system faculty are not in the classroom enough, but your average faculty member teaches?
4 courses a semester.
Okay. Okay. One of the most intriguing things I've found, and that's why I alluded in the opening to the change in the UW system, is folding the 2-year colleges into the 4 years. Now, you're in the process of folding 2.
Right.
Baraboo Sauk
Yes,
and Richland.
Right. Right.
Talk to me about that assimilation process, and how do you envision, where do you want it to end up 2-3 years from now, sir?
Well, part of it is this notion that I have that we all have to be working to have some control over our own destiny, okay? Those campuses have been excellent places to get an associate's degree that you can transfer in and finish in a more specialized area at a 4-year campus. They haven't, because of that, they haven't been very engaged with business and industry in their region. Now, fortunately for us, both of those campuses are located in places that we have strong ties and that we had visited a number of times in the last 2 or 3 years to talk with business and industry and local elected officials. We need to make those programs directly relevant in those regions. So, Richland and Baraboo both located in very agricultural areas, so we're going to develop some agricultural programming that serves business and industry in that area. Baraboo, Sauk County, is located 8 miles from the Wisconsin Dells, a $1 billion tourist industry. So we're going to be offering some hospitality and business programming that's directly relevant to those businesses. We're going to work very closely together with them.
Is this programming that they do not now offer at the Baraboo?
Right, exactly.
That's fascinating. So you're going to grow into the hospitality. Is there anybody else in the system providing that?
Well, I'm very proud that our approach is to collaborate. The University of Wisconsin Stout has a 4-year hospitality degree. Yeah. We've been working with them to develop our programming. So we'll offer, our plan is to offer an associate's degree in that area, and then that will tee them up if they want to get the 4-year degree, they'll do it with Stout. I think that's a great collaboration within our system.
Students at the UW colleges are different, have a different demographic profile than your average undergrad on this campus, aren't they? Don't they tend to be older and going part-time? Or is that
Not
wrong?
really.
No, really?
Not yet.
Thanks for the correct. No, I'm sorry, not yet.
Not yet. We do need to provide some sort of educational programming for students who are non-traditional. Now, that may be different. That may be certificate programs who already have people who have jobs and are looking to move up within their organization. It may be providing training to business and industry, which could provide a revenue stream. But the reason those 2-year colleges were struggling with enrollment is that they were appealing to essentially the same demographic that the 4-year campuses were. Right. We have to expand that. We also have to work more closely with K through 12. The smaller numbers of people graduating from high school means that we need a larger percentage of them pursuing higher education. And it not only, sort of bachelor's degree, but even encouraging students to get involved in technical degrees. So I think it's a win if we get a higher percentage of those students to go on to get technical degrees at our technical colleges, because there's a great need for those folks in business and industry now. That means we have to start talking to those students earlier in their careers. We can't wait till they're juniors and seniors in high school. We have to be doing programming that gets them involved in thinking about higher education when they're in middle school at the latest.
The UW system has had for 6 years, a freeze on resident undergrad tuition. How has this campus dealt with that freeze?
Well, I think it's important to understand our demographic of our students. We still have approaching 40% of our students, first generation in their family, to go to college.
40%.
Almost 40%. A significant portion of them, around 30%, are Pell eligible, which means they come from really modest means. And even if you take the ones that aren't Pell eligible, they still come from modest means. So I've always thought that keeping it affordable is really part of our mission. So you haven't heard me say too much about the tuition freeze. The conversation has to be, what sort of support do we get from the state? I think it's very important to increase the amount of need-based aid. I think reasonable and modest increases in the support that comes from the state. And then on occasion, some increases in tuition at some point in time will probably be needed as a necessary part. One of the ways to explain that is, so this past biennium, we got the first sort of statewide pay plan in a decade. The way that works is that 75% of that comes from the state, and historically, the other 25% has come from tuition increases. So great that we got the pay plan, but if the tuition increase isn't there, where do we find the money to cover our share, the campus's share of that compensation plan? So those are the kinds of things that need to be talked through.
A major decision in the next budget will be whether to continue the tuition freeze on resident undergrad. Now that'll be made in the Capitol, so you may not be able to take a position on it, but if it's continued for a 7th and 8th year, will it pinch this campus hard?
Well, again, it depends.
You want to take a position on it?
It depends on the kind of support that comes from the state.
Okay.
Right? That's the balancing factor. So if you're asking me, if we can't get any more revenue from tuition and we can't get any more revenue from the state to support our program, whether that's going to cause an issue, well, yeah, it is. But it's not one or the other. It's thinking about it in a way that says, okay, there are going to be some increased costs. How do we work together to find a way forward that works?
But if you're appearing before the Joint Finance Committee and a member asks you whether the tuition freeze should continue, are you going to take a position? If so, what?
I want to keep the education offered by this institution affordable. So I'm not one of the ones that sort of say the answer to all of this is to raise tuition. I think modest increases in tuition are appropriate, but we should be held accountable for that.
The statewide debate over Foxconn, is there a Foxconn opening for your campus in terms of R&D? The $100 million for Madison, I mean, do you have Foxconn envy on this campus?
No, because we produce a significant portion of the engineers that are available in this state, and so they're going to have to hire some of our people. My view is they will find that our students are great engineers and they want to stay in Wisconsin. So we're going to be just fine.
Will there be a UW-Platteville emissary to Foxconn to say, do you need this type?
Oh, we're already talking with them. We're already talking with them. And it's not just engineers, right? We have industrial technology here, right? So they're going to need some of those folks. They're going to need HR people. They're going to need some of our liberal arts graduates to do some of the other things that they, that a business concern is going to do. And we're going to be right there front and center to serve our students well and provide those opportunities.
So Foxconn will play a role in this campus.
Absolutely. But Kohler is here, Alliant Energy is here, Carrier is here. Over in Dubuque, there's IBM.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you training Iowans?
Oh, absolutely. Right. Well, so if I can switch up, enrollment, right?
Yeah.
Demographics are shrinking. We're going to have to expand our footprint so that we're attracting students from farther away. So that we actually can be an importer of talent. Because the students who come here are going to be looking at the business and industries that recruit our students.
Do you have fewer full-time students on campus this year than last year?
About the same.
About the same.
It's down maybe, 20 or 30 students.
That's
bucking the trend that we were facing.
But over the 9 years, you've seen an increase in students.
Yeah, we're down about 5% from where we were at our peak.
Does that concern you?
Oh, absolutely. Because over 60% of our revenue to operate the institution comes from the students. So yeah, so we have a new branding campaign geared to really leverage social media. We're looking at going into new markets or being much more aggressive in markets. I'm from Des Moines. We were talking earlier about how that's changing. So we're going to be targeting that, the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, the Quad Cities, expanding our footprint down into further south into Illinois. So my notion is that anywhere within a 6-hour drive is a place for potential students. Now, so I'm involved with the NCAA, and so I have to go to Indianapolis a couple of times a year. A former student that I knew from my days at Duke Law School, I admitted him law school there, reached out to me and lives in Indianapolis, works for Cummings. Well, Cummings has a presence right here in Mineral Point. And so we're going to develop that connection. So we can tell a kid from Indianapolis, one of the industries that's involved in your state actually has a footprint in our state when we're 20 miles away. So we have to expand that footprint. I don't think you're going to see us grow to like 8,500 undergraduate students. But if we can stay at about between 7,500 and 8,000, then we won't have to make any dramatic changes just based on what enrollment looks like.
As a native of Iowa, let me ask you about their community college system.
Mm-hmm.
Do their community colleges amount to combinations of Wisconsin's two-year colleges and our tech colleges, sir?
Yeah, they don't have a separate technical college program. It's kind of comparing apples and oranges. Wisconsin's population is a bit larger than Iowa's. Mm-hmm. We in Wisconsin developed this very robust public university system. Iowa has 3 public universities and dozens and dozens of small private colleges. So the dynamic is a little different in the state.
2 years ago, the discovery of what was called a $1 billion reserve for the system. What's been the fallout on your campus? Does UW-Platteville still have a reserve fund that's been drawn down, or can you talk about that?
Yes, we have a reserve fund. It amounts to about what it would take to cover 2 months worth of operating.
2 months.
Okay, so I found that whole conversation very interesting. I think it's a very useful discussion to have about what's the appropriate level of reserves to have available. What bothers me is when people call it a slush fund, because that imputes that it was being used for things that were inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Well, what might we use that? We might use it to enhance our student support services. So we've done something here of developing what we call success coaches that help students not just with academic advising, but the array of challenges that they face, and encourage them to take full advantage of all of the sort of opportunities available here. Undergraduate research, co-op, and internships. When they have a financial problem, they understand that they're not on their own. We can help coach them through and explain to them the options that are short of dropping a class or dropping out. So one year I used a significant stream of money from our reserves to initiate and develop that program. So those are the kinds of things. Universities are going to have to be more nimble, right? One of the challenges as a leader of a university now is people keep waiting. When are we going to establish the new normal so that we can just know what we're going to do from year to year and not have to worry about it? We don't have that luxury. We're always going to have to be constantly thinking about where are the places we need to make investments now that are going to help sustain us in the future. And that's what those reserve funds can give you the room to do.
What about the balance between tuition and student fees? How does that, talk about that on this campus?
Our student fees have remained relatively flat. They've gone up this year because we've added to our recreational facilities that was approved by a student referendum a few years ago. what we've done, and because our enrollment was going up, we had a little more flexibility. So when we saw balances increasing in one area, we would reduce that fee, shift it to something else. So, for example, we started the shuttle bus around town so that you wouldn't have to drive to campus. So we put that in place. Then over time, the city took that over, so that was $30 a year from each student. So then we were able to redirect that. We've monitored that very closely to keep it relatively flat over time. This is the first year that there's been a significant increase in that fee since I've been here.
UW-Platteville did pretty well in the current state budget.
Yeah.
With the capital.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeking in the next state budget?
Well, most of what so am I a little jealous that I see some of these other projects going on? Yeah, a little bit, but then if you take a close look and sort of see of the more modest infrastructure needs that we have, those are being addressed. Improving classrooms. One of the deck in our library needed $1 million rehab to keep it from sinking into the ground. That's happening. So we're seeing smaller projects that are important and critical to our campus being met in that process. But we will be developing significant asks over the course of this biennium.
The debate over sports, how big of a role does the university's sports teams play? How's your football team doing?
We have a great football team. Great football team. High hopes, right? I think there are a couple of things. Number one, we're Division III. Yeah. And some people don't know what that means, but that means there's no athletic scholarships. So our students, athletes, are not different from the average student that comes here, other than that their passion happens to be athletics. Mm-hmm. Now let me tell you, that's been one of the big attractors of students from out of state. So more than half of our football team is made up of players from Iowa and Illinois.
Is that right?
Okay, and that is a way to get into markets for students that you wouldn't otherwise see. So 2 or 3 student athletes have good experience here. People learn about it from their high school. You get 2 or 3 other students who are interested in other things. Okay, so I want competitive sports, but the Division III philosophy of them being normal students and taking advantage of the other opportunities that are available on campus is very near and dear to my heart. I do want them to win. There's a lot of things you can learn from being a student athlete. You can learn those same lessons when you're winning as when you're losing. It's a lot more fun to win.
What sports have been added or subtracted in your tenure?
We haven't added any or subtracted any.
Okay.
That was a hard choice during budget cuts. Our student athletes actually have to pay a fee to participate to cover some of the costs. I'm not going to raise overall student fees to support student athletics. We went through a changeover in athletic directors. One of the primary drivers of that, the former one retired, is to sort of say that has to be a revenue generator to support our programming. And so we're very aggressively looking for sponsorships and philanthropy to help support our student athletes who add a great deal to this campus. In some ways, athletics is the front porch of the campus. People see that.
What's the record of the Pioneer football team right now?
We're 1-0 right now.
Okay.
Our next game is Saturday, and it's out of town, and so I'm disappointed that I can't be there.
Understand.
But we're ranked number 16 in the country. The general public may not be aware of, we are, in many people's eyes, the most competitive Division III conference in the country. In almost every sport, one of the teams from one of our institutions is competing at the highest level in national competition.
And I remember when the Bears summer camp was
yes,
here.
Yeah.
It was. Almost out of time, a couple more questions. Mm-hmm. How would you describe what's been called town-gown relations?
Well, we're very engaged with the city here. I think one of the first things that happened when I came is that since our enrollment was growing, the students were sort of taking over all the housing in town. And so we worked with the city to find a place to increase the on-campus housing, and then we were very innovative in developing a real estate foundation and enabled us to build and add 1,000 beds to our residence halls in under 3 years, which in Wisconsin is at the speed of light.
What percent of your your undergrads commute from their homes, or maybe live on campus is the best way to ask that?
Half of the students live on campus.
Okay.
So we require all freshmen and sophomores to live on campus because we think that's part of the experience they need to have that improves our retention and graduation rates.
Maybe a final question. Cast a vision for UW-Platteville 5-10 years out, sir.
I see us as being a dynamic force in this region, serving our students from nearby Wisconsin residents very well, but attracting students from 200-300 miles away that is a net importing of talent, and much stronger ties and collaboration with business and industry. You know, one of the things that happened most recently is a couple of years ago, we have a foundry program here.
A foundry program?
Only one in the state. A great program, absolutely fabulous faculty member that drives that. The foundry industry in the state saw it as being so critical to meet their needs that they actually came together, contributed to a fund to endow a professorship to assure that that position would remain in place in our business and industry college. That is a very unique thing to have happened at a comprehensive regional university. I see, as I look forward, more of those sorts of opportunities coming to fruition. The big thing we need to do is make sure that we have the flexibility. The university system and our campuses have the flexibility to develop those sorts of programs on our campuses.
And this will be the last question. What's the one thing that you're most worried about would get in the way of the vision you just outlined, sir?
Well, I think the importance of leadership and having a voice and getting out into the communities is real important. And that's the real challenge. Make sure that all of Wisconsin understands the value that's added by our great university system. I think that was the big disconnect over the last decade, that we didn't do a good enough job of remaining connected and making the case, not so much to the legislators, but to all of the stakeholders across the state and in our region. And that's the real challenge. How do you stay relevant and make sure that people really understand the great value that this university adds to the state and that the system adds to the state?
Chancellor Shields, thanks for your
Great
time.
meeting with you.
Thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.